You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Stellar Success Podcast again. Anthony, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for coming over.
Absolutely.
What does it mean to manage a practice of doctors?
Well, I guess the way I like to describe it is I pretty much do everything other than the medicine. So, soup to nuts, I'm generally involved in everything that's going on in the practice. I'm often aware of what it is, but really all of the administrative functions, the HR, the payroll, the contract negotiations, pretty much everything you can think of that supports it, right? So whether it's benefits, whether it's there's a lot of things, and then there's sort of the I don't know, the maybe not as character descript part where it's just sort of being there and trying to be a leader and helping to push things forward and move the group hopefully in directions that makes it more successful in the short term or the long term, depending on what you're focusing on. But that's kind of my role is I do what I can. I tell people that I my job is to help doctors make better decisions, and if I'm doing that well, then I think I'm doing my job fairly well, and supporting what they do. And they're the real heroes. I'm just trying to do what I can to help support their mission.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about your story. How did you start in this thing and what are you doing now?
Absolutely. So I have a background in I have a master's in accounting, and I always wanted to work in an industry with a real purpose and a vision. And so I sort of made incremental steps from school all the way throughout to really get to a place where I can have a positive impact on operations. And I sort of found my calling about a decade ago now, when I got a call to help to work with various physician groups around the country, helping to run and manage their practices. And so there was a company, one of the largest revenue cycle management companies, is Zotec Partners. They were looking for new practice managers who are basically like a fractional share who manage sort of multiple groups at once because they don't really need necessarily, or at least they didn't, sort of one full-time resource. And so I was sort of spread across several clients at once. And so I got a call one day that they were looking for accountants with personalities, is the way they looked at it. And so I was excited at the opportunity to really work in a practice that I felt really helped people and it was an important part of our people's lives, and gave me my own sort of personal mission and vision in this, to help the doctors do what they do best. And so I've been lucky enough now to work in this. I worked at Zotec with I think 10 different physician practices for about 6 years. And then I ultimately got lucky enough to work with my current group now for the past 3.5. And so it's been a great ride. I love what I do. I try to help doctors in general make better decisions, whether they're in my practice or not. I just tend to do more work for the ones who obviously are in my practice. But that's sort of my ethos, my mission.
What kind of group do you work with now right now?
We are a radiology group. Basically, we do professional only, entirely hospital based. I've also worked with anesthesia groups in the past, but I primarily focused on radiology.
Interesting. What's the difference? What do you think that the major difference is between radiology and anesthesiology?
I mean, there are more commonalities, at least in my role, than there are differences. I'll say that much because ultimately they're all trying to help patients at the hospital, right? And they're doing different functions. Radiology or anesthesia a while back obviously had the introduction of CRNAs that sort of changed the dynamics of practice. And radiology has had a lesser extent of that, but then radiology really is more with the advent of telerad and sort of the medicine practicing outside of the local area. I think probably that and pathology are the main groups where you could really do the same function and not even have to live on that half of the country. And so each of them has their own unique, issues, of course. A lot of them are, the reimbursement for those can be challenging with respect to the market and economics in general, in both of those specialties. But I had a very limited exposure to anesthesia early on, and then I sort of shifted almost fully into radiology. And I really do find that sometimes the character of the folks who work in anesthesia versus radiology can be a bit different, just the sort of the type of person who would go into one versus another. I would say not that there's an archetype for every specialty, but there are certainly outliers. But I would say more often than not, you have different types of people that go into each one, and they sort of they're really the star of the show. And like I said, I'm trying to do my best. I tell people often enough that I'm the janitor, trying to just kind of clean up the messes and keep everything running operationally, while the doctors get to do focus on the medicine and hopefully
Yeah,
less so on
that
the
was
work.
interesting. It was interesting to know, you're the guy who keeps them running, basically, right, from the business point of view.
I'll try.
Um, and one of the main things that I've noticed in medicine and practicing physicians is that the connection that they have with the business side of things is close to zero. Um, so
It can be.
they definitely need someone like you to run the practice and, make sure they make money of what their clinical work is done.
Right.
What do you think it's the main, I would say, thing to be fixed or to be improved in this kind of relationship? What would you like to see from the medical side of your group?
That's a great question. And I'm not going to speak to my group specifically. I'm going to speak sort of across what I've seen in the various groups I've worked with. And I would say this much. I would say there's a pretty stark difference in the way that folks manage a medical group. You can take two identical groups side by side, same number of doctors, same specialty. And what really informs the difference is the character and the quality of the people in those particular groups, how capable they are to manage a group, and whether or not those people are receptive to feedback from people like myself, or they sort of, you have some people who feel like they kind of want to go it alone and do, their idea is always the best. I've seen everything from, sort of benign dictatorships all the way to oligopoly, and then, much more robust democracy. And it really, these are the sort of questions. If I were a physician looking at practices, I think I would be asking questions culturally around how do shareholders interact with each other? How are decisions made? Tell me examples of success stories that you've had as a group for the past 3, 4 years. I mean, where have we been and where are we trending? People sort of get all hung up and focused on the economics. How much am I going to make? How much am I going to work? How much am I going to have? How much vacation am I going to have? And they're kind of walking into you're going to own a business. I mean, if you're an independent practice anyway, you're looking at potentially owning a business. Well, how healthy is that business? How healthy are the relationships between the people who make that business work? And there is a huge spread in diversity of opinion between diversity of experience in groups that would otherwise be seemingly identical, where you're really just sort of otherwise choosing on, just objective characteristics like what the location is or how much they're going to pay you. It's so much more important, or as important, to focus on, is that group going to be around for the next 5 years, because it's the folks get along and they like each other, and they hang out with each other's kids, and they try to help each other out when somebody's struggling. I mean, those are the kinds of things that really bind a group together. And those are some of the questions that I rarely, if ever, get asked. Maybe they sort of feel it in the interview process as you go through, but I think people should be a lot more focused on those kinds of things, because that's the ties that bind in a group. And you don't want to walk into a disaster. And I've seen a few of
Yeah, it's a
them.
wild west out there. Um, I'm just thinking that from the business point of view, when that practice is evaluated,
Mhm.
everybody comes to you. and everybody looks at the spreadsheets you have and at the reports you give them,
Hmm.
especially if you want to sell the practice or if you want to get a partner or sell a partnership or things like that.
Yeah, of course.
So you know, it's very hard for someone, a practicing physician, to just do their clinical work. And
Hmm.
there's so many out there that don't understand anything from the business point of view.
Yes.
Although they own the practice, they're part owner of that practice. But
Yes.
it's almost a understandable situation they're in because we're not, I mean, most of us were not taught business in school. We have no idea what we're doing with
Exactly
money.
correct. Yeah.
We just know how to treat patients, eventually get a good income. Like you
Hmm.
said, get good vacation time. If we can have some profit sharing from the business that we're owning, that's good enough.
Hmm.
But ultimately, these things are in your hand. What do you think makes a good practice manager then?
I appreciate that question. Um, in order to do my job well, I think you need to have really good relationships with the people who you're working with. I'm lucky that I work with a practice of about 25 total radiologist physicians. And it's about the quality of the people. They're ultimately generating the work, generating the revenue. Sort of going into the hospital day to day, or reading and working and doing procedures. Uh, they're the ones who are driving this business, and it will succeed or fail based on their work and their relationships with the hospital, with each other. And so I think you have to be aware and involved as much as you can. You need to sort of sell the practice because, I mean, in a lot of ways, we're all competing for talent these days, which is one of the most critical of issues, of course. And you really have to, as a manager, you have to be involved, engaged, and have really good relationships with the folks who are coming in. And you've got to be able to sell the practice on based on your vision for the folks who you need to recruit. And so that plus the hospital side. I mean, if you're an independent practice and you own your own facilities, that's one thing. If you're partnered with one or more hospitals, you need to have good relationships with the hospital, but you also need to know how to negotiate those arrangements so that you can successfully navigate your business in a positive way. It's a challenging environment, and to your point, physicians aren't trained for this, right? You don't go to med. I mean, you spend enough time in school as it is just learning how to become a doctor, and then you get out and you kind of join a group and hope that everything goes well in that group. Some people are clearly more capable than others. And so I think, going back to that earlier concept about sort of what you were talking about with folks joining a practice and not having a lot of training, some people are much more naturally inclined to be leaders. Some are more apt in general to take sort of the business side and understand the economics. And some people really want to do the work and sort of be left alone and hope that the business does well. And I think there are places for both of those types of people in a modern practice because you need both. You don't want everybody leading and you don't want everybody avoiding, right? I mean, you need to have some kind of a balance. Uh, it's challenging, but asking, what makes a good practice manager, I think it's the quality of your relationships, the communication style. Communication is critical, because that's the development of those relationships and how you sort of manage the business. Do people feel like it's super transparent, that they can trust what you're doing? It's all based on a foundation of trust. I guess I should have started there. They have to trust you, right? Because ultimately, I know intimate details about every doctor I've ever worked with in ways that other people would not, right? And if they can't trust you from the start, you've lost the group to begin with. So it's trust in relationships, really.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's go back to yourself a little bit, and in your story so far, do you have an example of things that didn't necessarily were very successful on your side, like anything that didn't work out, kind of stumble in place, and you learn from it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's how we all learn. right? Is by failure and repetition until you get things better than you did before. I've had any number. Yeah, I fail all the time. We're trying to, we're trying to push forward on all fronts and succeed. But I mean, to take a particular example, I mean, I've had relationships that I felt that I could have managed in a different way to sort of get a different outcome potentially and have people hopefully stay, or make a different decision. I'd have to think about a specific example around, failure. But I think you've got to be open to it, and you've got to try, especially in an environment like this, you've got to try a whole lot of ideas and see what sticks, right? And not everything's always going to work sometimes for reasons you wouldn't expect. Um, but I'd have to think about a specific example of where I really torpedoed something. There, I'm sure. I don't like to keep them in the front of my brain.
Yeah.
It's like that quarterback where you want to have like a short-term memory. But no, I think that's how we all learn ultimately is by failing repeatedly until we figure out what not to do. And
Yeah.
hopefully you do that faster rather than slow.
Interesting. Um, Now, what do you think is the most important thing to bring a practice to success, like financial success, um, mostly?
I'm
Uh,
going to speak about radiology
yeah,
because right now we're in an environment where there's more business out there than you could ever hope to even tackle, right? The question is all, can you staff what you have and can you grow in a sustainable way if you even want to grow? At this point, the market is just so insanely crazy that you've got this massive competition for these limited resources and talent, and you've got to sort of stand out as a business because there's a natural life cycle. People retire, people move, and you've got to sort of make sure that your practice is strong and growing. It's really more about recruiting and I would say retention is number one, recruiting is number two. Those are probably the most important things right now in this kind of insane environment. Growth has to be really careful and methodical, and it needs to really work for the organization that you're working for. Because if you grow for growth's sake and you don't realize that the people that you're working with don't actually want to move in that direction or they don't want to do that much work or they sort of take risks that they feel like are more than they could bite off, that could be a career-ending maneuver. You don't want to put the practice in an untenable position because the market itself is already untenable as it is. So don't give people more reasons to not want to stick around, right? You have to have you really have to manage it in such a way that they have the lifestyle and the work capacity that they want, which is increasingly challenging in an environment where there are fewer radiologists and the volumes just keep looking like this. And so we don't really look at growth as an overall strategic target, something that we want to achieve. We want sustainability and we want high quality. We want good service to our hospital partners and we want good relationships. Just growing for the sake of growing is almost reckless in a market like this. And so
there is.
about your question about financial stability, I guess I should have tailored it to that. You will be financially stable in a market like this if you can provide high quality and you can be reliable. There are a lot of providers who can't provide that level of quality and
So
or.
it's basically comes down to the quality of staffing that you have in your
Yes,
group.
yes,
Now there's a big issue that people talk about for a number of years now for the radiology groups, especially. And I'm not picking on this specialty. I'm just saying that it's probably at the upfront of this new AI revolution, right?
yes.
Um, what do you think is going to happen?
So the best way to predict the future is to look at the past, right? If you remember before PACS, everybody thought that, radiologists used to hang films and they would read a couple of films a day and you had to have the resolution right. You couldn't see anything. And PACS came along. We were reaching a point kind of like we are now in the industry where historically it started to become too much work hanging films to really get things done. And we got PACS extended the longevity of the radiology career for about 20 years, 20, 25 years. I think the same thing is going to happen with AI. We actually need AI to keep us producing at a level where it's sustainable. When you see these massive increases in volume that are happening everywhere, you've got to have a way to manage that. And AI is going to give us the tools to be a lot more efficient and to do the work that we really need to do. That's the promise of AI. And I know famously the guy in New York Times predicted that in 2016 that radiology would be replaced by AI, and now we need more radiologists more than ever. And so I think that was catastrophically wrong. And I really think it's going to become a tool. Really, if AI can become a resident, it can be good as a resident and sort of help people to focus on the important stuff. I think that'll be a lot of progress. We're nowhere near that yet. And if ultimately it can become a fellow where you can use it as a fellow and sort of really focus on the tough stuff, that would be ideal.
Yes, that would be ideal, but aren't you afraid that AI it's actually going to be becoming the professor?
Not really. I mean, maybe in 10, 15, 20 years, sure. I mean, I couldn't begin to predict what might happen, but I also know I attend a lot of conferences with some AI experts who are developing leading things in the radiology field, the people who are sort of driving the innovation. And AI is really good at things like Where's Waldo, right? It's also really bad at things like, the children's book where the dog is sitting on top of the doghouse and he has a flower pot on his head and it doesn't know why. And so AI is a good tool for certain things, but it's also really bad at other things. It misses massive issues and it finds sort of specific fine-tuned things it's looking for. And so, yeah, it might in 20 years get to the point where they might be replacing people. And in third world countries, I will tell you, AI is better than no doctor at all.
Yeah.
But as far as putting the medical legal liability on an AI company and having patients sue, I don't know, Grok or whatever, OpenAI, I think we're very far away from that, and I really don't. I could be wrong. I mean, I've
Yeah.
certainly been wrong before, but I don't. I think for the next 15 years at least, if not longer, we're going to need more radiologists than ever, and we don't have enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shortage of specialists in general in many specialties, but I think
Yeah.
the radiology, anesthesia, all these specialties are very short, and there's no way to catch up in the next few years very easily. Um,
There are ways, but they have to
um,
be. There are difficult challenges, but I mean, there are a lot of doctors that want to come to this country. Depends on how you want to solve the problem. But
well, yes. Yeah, now, I mean, obviously the current political climate is something that could be
yes.
something that could be in the way of this idea. But you know, I'm very happy we got to talk because this is a perspective that not many people have from your point of view in a medical practice, in a medical business. And one of the questions that arise very often from the retire or to be retired medical professionals in a practice is, what do I do in order to retire well?
Oh, okay.
And from your point of view as a practice manager of very high income individuals,
Hmm.
what do you suggest for someone, for a doctor like this to strategize and plan for his retirement from the business point of view?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to answer it a couple different ways. First, I would tell you that retirement can mean different things to different people. There are people who full stop retire, and then there are people who retire and then work a little bit whenever they want to, right? And there's a lot to be said for remaining active and engaged and using the training you've had for the past 50 years in a productive way and sort of, maintaining, because the concern is that as you retire and you sort of go out, there's only so much golf you can play, right? There's only so many trips you can take, and then it starts to wear a little bit, and you want to feel productive and engaged. And so, if you're earning a smaller income, but you still are earning an income, which is possible in certain specialties, certainly ours, that's a way to, that's where that changes the economics of your retirement situation. Now, if you're talking about retiring cold turkey, which a lot of people want to do as well, you really just have to set yourself up for success. I mean, I will say this much, if you've been working in radiology for the past 20 years, give or take, chances are you've had enough economic success, as long as you hadn't really sort of been, living to a lifestyle that sort of lifestyle inflation. If you haven't experienced that, which is difficult to manage, there you should really be fairly well off with a nest egg by now. I mean, most radiologists have, at least in medical practice, have been putting away at a minimum, the full profit sharing max for any of the groups that I've worked with for decades now. And so, it really has to do with, like, what are your financial goals, and then controlling your expenses in a reasonable way, long term. But I think you have options as a physician, as long as you're still capable of practicing medicine, which, I mean, sometimes folks are just not, they get to an age where they're just no longer capable. But when you retire, if you're talking about 60 or 65, even 70, I mean, we have doctors. I've worked with doctors in the past that were 80 and still perfectly well functioning at a high level. I mean, it
Yeah.
depends on what retirement means to you, and it depends on, what kind of lifestyle you're gonna maintain. But there are choices. There are a lot of choices in that could potentially help somebody.
Yeah. Um, so Anthony, if you would look back with what you accumulated in experience right now to yourself when you started this, what would you change? What kind of advice would you give to yourself?
Um, I think I think just focusing early on uh, the most important factors, I think are important. Um, I don't know that I would really necessarily change anything about my experience or the way that because I had this really great development period where I learned from some really excellent people who are around me. I got to the point where I felt capable enough to sort of do this myself, and now what I'm trying to do is help my practice to be more successful, and to try to help others, through methods like this, and others to sort of, focus on what should be, how to sort of be better practice managers, or how to run a practice better. I don't think I would change a lot, honestly. I've really enjoyed the way that I've been able to learn this business. It's an experience based business, right? You don't learn. I mean, there's so much that I do in a day. The breadth of my workscape is basically the entirety of the practice. I mean,
Yeah.
anything that happens in the practice, I'm generally some way involved, other than actually doing the medicine. And so you've gotta go through the fire to experience some of that. And I'm still learning. I mean, I will not say by any stretch that I'm at a place where I'm sort of the fountain of all knowledge and I know everything. I mean, you try to stay humble, and you try to keep learning and working on yourself, honestly. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
been more successful, is for me, is just trying to get better as a person, as a listener, as somebody who's trying to be a leader and to help doctors to make better decisions. I think it's a work in progress, and I don't think it's ever done.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do, and I I'm grateful and happy for the experience I had, and I'm excited for the future.
What would you advise someone that wants to do what you're doing? How to start, where to go, what to do?
I think you'd have to. I think you'd have to. So first of all, I think almost everybody who works in my position fell backwards into it. I don't think nobody went to school for this, and
That was
so
my question.
yes.
What if someone wants to become a practice manager? What do they do?
You need a background in business. And when I say business, I don't necessarily mean a specific function like marketing or finance. You need to be fingers in running a business, be involved in sort of the mechanics, like learn how to negotiate deals and work on things. And there's no like you're going to do these three steps and then become eligible to do this. I think you need a good foundational background in business, and I think you need to be a good communicator and open to, sort of good communication with people. It obviously helps significantly if you've ever had any healthcare experience, which I did not. But I just got lucky enough that somebody was looking for somebody with my personality traits and experience in business in general, and they thought I could do the job. A lot of people who work in what I do have been maybe a tech in the past, or so some other way. They sort of, you know, they had a friend who called them and they were working in this other business and now they're doing this instead. Or maybe they worked at a revenue cycle management company and they sort of translated those skills. There's no training program for it. And so I think just having enough experiences in areas that matter, helping physicians to be more successful and having good interactions with them. I mean, work in a medical practice, right? I mean, understand, take a different role in a medical practice and understand what that looks like. And I mean, that's probably the most common way, is working your way up in one way or another through some business that you happen to be working in, to the point where people are confident that you can help lead them.
Yeah. Thanks for coming over. I think your points were really interesting from, the other side of the curtain, I would say. And I hope more people will appreciate and will maybe come for your advice. Where can they reach you?
Uh, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a very unique last name, so chances are, if they have my last name, they're related to me in some way. They'll find me. No, but please, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Like I said, I try to help physicians make better decisions. I know the ones that pay me obviously are the ones I work with the most. But I regularly talk to medical students, not in my specialty, and other areas, trying to just help them to sort of, be educated about the decisions they're making. There are so many questions, if I were somebody coming out of medical school, that I would have scripted and listed, and make sure that every practice or every facility that I'm visiting, that I would ask all of these questions. I would compare them, and I would make sure that that whatever I'm walking into, and this goes for experienced people just as well as new hires. I would make sure that I could probably create a list of some kind and put it out there. But I mean, there are some really critically important questions that people should have the answers to, and you would be shocked at how few questions I get around some of the most critically important areas of the practice, that
Yeah.
it's so much
Well,
more than, anyway.
maybe you should start an educational program for residents that are looking for jobs in the last year. And I think this management course would be a very helpful thing to do in the curriculum of any medical school. It doesn't matter the specialty.
Yeah.
How to pick a job, what to ask, like you said, have a list of questions that, a resident can go to the practice and ask, because there are things that we all been through this, and
Yes.
myself too, in my first job with my first practice, I
Mhm.
was like totally out of my realm when I walked into the business side of things. And it was just overwhelming. And, it took me about 2 or 3 years to kind of figure out what's going on with that practice. And I think your help here would mean a lot for someone like a fresh out of residency guy.
To that exact point, I have actually, with one of my physicians, we have done a couple of presentations to fellowship programs for exactly that reason, to try to help people. Obviously, we've been focusing a little bit on radiology, but generally speaking, my door is open to trying to help people with that experience. I think new people really get a huge exposure to academics, but they have no idea what they're walking into in the private market. They don't
Yeah,
know what the difference is between that and healthcare facilities or private equity for that matter.
yeah,
There's some key knowledge that we sort of deliver in maybe an hour or so to medical. We've done it to a couple with a couple of. But I think we'd like to do it with more. So if those
yeah.
opportunities arise, we'd be happy to share more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this notion of people coming out of residency and looking to be a partner. Everybody is like, being a partner means so much for them. They
Yes.
have no idea what that means, actually.
Partner in what?
Exactly. So, just the educational point of view of what it means to be a partner in a business and what it
Yes.
means to be a partner, a medical partner in a practice.
Right.
It's it's um it's a very steep curve of learning.
It is. And it shouldn't be daunting. I mean, there are some key concepts that
Yeah,
I think there's probably an 80-20 rule in there where you could give them a good amount of information and they'd be useful and kind of pick up the rest on their own. But
yeah,
there's so much to learn that
yeah.
you would just hope that people really pick up fast.
Well, I hope this podcast will help at least a few to kind of reach out to you and maybe get some more information on that.
That's great.
I
Thank you.
appreciate you
Well,
coming. Thank you very much, Anthony.
thank you for your time. It was great to talk to you.
Are you a busy medical professional striving to excel in life and work? Stellar Success Podcast brings you the habits and insights of top leaders in medicine and beyond. Discover strategies for balance, growth, and fulfillment in every episode. Follow us on Instagram at Stellar Success Podcast for daily inspiration. Start your journey to success today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel now.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.